Hello, everybody. If you haven't noticed, things look a little bit different here. I'm actually with Dan Vogel of Scaling Pedals at the Recovery Room Studios up in North Seattle. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm great.
Awesome. This is a little bit of a different video in a few ways. Normally, I just cover one pedal at a time, but you came to me with this idea of having this host of Portastudio pedals.
My view on pedals is often looking on the inside of how they work. But in summer of this year, it felt like a flurry of these came out.
Yeah.
And so as I started looking at inside of them, I started going, there's an interesting bit of how these pedals work together, what makes them the same or different. You know, the question was always, which one's the best one? And I think we'll probably not settle that one here.
Probably not.
But so I went out and I tracked down every version of them that's been made in the last 15 years or so. Then I got overwhelmed with how do I tell people if they're good or not, because I just look at the builds. And so I'm glad that you were able to work with me on figuring out how we can show people what makes these great or not great.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really excited to dig into each of these, give each one its own small amount of time. If you're watching this video, please refer to the timestamps in the video description. So if there's one in particular you want to hear about or hear samples from, you can bounce around at your leisure. But let's talk just a little bit about the history of the Portastudio, which all of these are based on the TASCAM Portastudio. That's an at-home way that musicians would record things before we could easily record into computers. So the Portastudio line came out about 79, I think.
That's right. It's actually marked on the PCB 4V. JHS 44 has the exact release date of it.
Oh, that's really cool. So we'll also definitely take a look on the inside of all of these pedals because that is what you do. It's what you do better than anybody else, I think. But a lot of these are based on the 424s you mentioned, and that came out in the early 90s, I believe.
Yeah, so like that there's no one true pedal, something like this one, the Tark 144, the 144 refers to the first Portastudio. And so that was a different one from, say, the Portastudio Mark II, which this one is based on. And in fact, this other one is from a different version of the Portastudio line from the 80s, between here and there. But the premise was the same, right? This was a big breakthrough for those who are old enough to really live that time period, where suddenly you could, outside of a studio setting, record 4 tracks at the same time. Exploited the ability of a normal cassette tape to be used as a 4-track instrument. And so that was this huge democratization of recording, where suddenly it went from, you could record it with a really bad, tape recorder to being able to do a little bit of separation and multiple inputs. That said, they weren't very good.
They were charming. Let's call them charming. Quickly, disclosures. I know for me personally, I do a podcast with Chris Benson called Amplified Nonsense. I don't have much of a relationship with the rest of these builders, but do you have any disclosures? I know you bought most of these with your own money.
Yeah, so Benson did send me one because I thought I was going to get this recorded right as they finally released. They were one of the victims of the JHS success, which is that a couple of these, Benson's and Dirty Sock Effects versions, were actually being made a few weeks or months before JHS's release, but once JHS released it and sold thousands of units immediately, they all backed down. But then with the enduring success, I know that Benson and our friends at Dirty Sock Effects both felt encouraged to push on into the market anyway, that it was not a one pedal to rule them all situation. As we see.
And they all are, there's a lot of uniqueness in these that we will certainly get to, but I think that one thing that we can attribute the sudden surge in demand would be like MKII, who I wasn't familiar with him until watching him on SNL, but he has brought back into the popular guitar fold just a ton of some of those older effects. I know the Rockman, the MXR Rockman, that was just one example, and the other one was, from my understanding, this JHS pedal.
Well, before the JHS pedal,
right,
he was actually, in fact, using the Portastudio in a way that we wouldn't necessarily have done so in the past. In the past, you would have recorded to tape, he used the input as his fuzz pedal, and then the direct line out from there into the amplification environment. So using it as a live effect as opposed to simply, this is my recording studio and it's limited. So that was very innovative. And it feels like there's a duration where we run away from technology because we want it to be better. And then we get to a point where it's so much better that we decide to run back to the old stuff because of the limitations it gave us. And I think that MKII, being of this new generation, was able to discover technology that most of us had just put back on the shelf as, oh, I'm glad we don't have to use that anymore.
Yeah.
To be, what can this do for me?
It's the same kind of idea behind pedals like the generation loss or the lossy even. As soon as we get to the point that we don't have those limitations anymore, there's a little bit of nostalgia or anemoia about it. And it's really interesting to see. Obviously, we have a lot of things that a lot of pedals to talk about today. Right, Dan, can you tell us about the first pedal we have?
Yeah, so our first pedal, the demo for this one is 14 or 15 years old. So it's been out for a while. This is from Mid-Fi Electronics, or Douglas Tuttle, who hand makes them all, I think in Massachusetts still. It's called the demo tape fuzz, and it's a very simple circuit, but it was attempting to capture that demo tape feeling, obviously in the name, where, again, this predates MKII or anything else, but there was something nostalgic about a simple EQ and then just a simple op-amp thing. This is such a old and classic one that the clones of this have been available forever. Builders have grown up building them. Mid-Fi is an interesting pedal company in that they tend to make these very little sketches of an idea. I don't often think of them as complete pedals, but they're often very innovative in doing something that no one else has done, often several years in advance of it.
That's really cool. So this was, when I went through and played them all, I went through and I played this one first. I wanted to go in the same order that we're going to be discussing these in the videos. And I had never really spent a lot of time with any of these Portastudio style pedals. I'd briefly played Benson's at the Effector Marketplace in Oklahoma City in 2025, but it was a little busy and I didn't want to take the board away. What surprised me when I was first playing it is you get so much in that last little crank of that trim knob. It really goes from like just a lot of character to kind of overdriven to absolutely very fuzzy. And it really is in that last click. And that's a theme that I experienced with all of the pedals personally. I don't know if your experience is the same.
Well, and that is how it's sold, is from gorgeous to gross.
Yes.
But I think that a lot of that is because this was not the circuit, the concept was never designed to be a messy circuit. It was supposed to be a very cheap, very minimal attempt at a high quality preamp. It's just that our notion of what a high quality preamp looks like has changed, but also now the knobs will go a little bit farther to get you that gross sound on the idea that you can clean it up in other ways.
Totally. Yeah, and just a simple 2 EQ, master volume, and then the trim, which is my understanding of the trim, is the gain knob on the preamp itself, the Portastudio itself. Is that right?
That is essentially the thing, right? Yeah. In your Portastudio, you would pick how much gain to take on the input, and then how much gain to use on the playback. And so that's going to be a theme we see everywhere, is that there's 2 volumes.
Yes.
And typically the first one is designed to just make sure you get enough signal in. The second one is how much do you want to crush the signal after.
So there's one gain stage EQ, and then for some of these second gain stage. And we'll get to that when we get there. Are there any interesting notes about the construction of this pedal when we open up the back?
So, like I said, this is an old circuit that's been often cloned. In this particular instance of the pedal, he used a very common 072 op-amp. This is the one that you'll find in most of your guitar pedals at this point. Historically, and we'll get to the historic reconstructions, it would have been a 4558, like you see in a Tube Screamer, if they were going for that 144, or it would have been one of the other op-amps. And from what I gather, various generations of this pedal, as he's made them, they're all handmade on demand, might have used other op-amps. In fact, older versions would let you swap the op-amp to get what kind of crunch you want from it, from overdriving the op-amp.
I feel like of all of them, to me, this felt like the fuzziest. And another theme I think that we'll see as we go on a lot of these pedals have a ton of gain on tap. So I don't know why, but that did surprise me a little bit. All right, well, let's hear this thing. What do we have here?
So this is the JSA Porta IV. JSA is a guy named Simon in Derby under the name of Just Some Audio. This came out in August of 2023, so 2 years before the JHS 424. This one is a hand-wired effect that he makes very interesting takes on fairly well-known circuits using special components and special elements. The most interesting part of this one from its build is we were talking about how the effect was input, EQ, output. But for those of us who were using them, there was also an element of it recorded to tape and then it came back out. And the tape would get worn out pretty fast because you'd be using the tape just in one direction, just for short amounts, and you'd be scrubbing and re-recording because you'd only get 5 or 10 minutes of recording time on them. And so what Simon was most interested in getting the sound was not just the distorted sound of the equipment, but to be able to capture some of the magic of how a tape would feel as it either was brand new or as it started to wear in and started to record less consistently, started dropping signal, started saturating too fast. And so he added an age knob to the format to do that.
Yeah, the age knob is really cool. I very much enjoyed this pedal. I felt like a little went a long way. It does get properly nasty. And this is also the first pedal that has 2 separate gain controls. One's called record and one's called trim. And then the main volume is called play, unless I have that backwards. And then it has, of course, the 2-band EQ control. But this was, yeah, I really like this one. It has very much a bit of a DIY aesthetic, which is cool. I love the knobs. It's a pretty pedal, and it also just gets really loud and can do that, just adding some character thing or getting extremely nasty.
The one other Portastudio note is he is imitating a Portastudio or Porta IV or 44 Mark I, which had a characteristic blue color to it.
Oh.
Whereas the 44 Mark II was gray, which is why you see some of these pedals are blue and some of them are gray in referencing basically which generation did the builder have most nostalgia for.
Awesome. What can you tell us about the insides?
So he's using the 4558 op amps, so he's getting the same sort of effect that the original signal would have had. For me, the cool part is that age knob. To achieve that saturation sound, he's got an LED and a resistor, right, which is a very common sort of opto-coupling approach. But instead of doing that like you would for a normal compressor or phaser or something where you want that optical isolation, he's put in a candle LED. So an LED that is random in flash, not in intensity. And so he's driving it from the signal, but it's flickering instead of being reflective of what the signal voltage should be. And this is a side channel type approach to changing the signal up. But it's a very novel trick that I haven't seen before for achieving a random saturation.
So this is one of only 2 of these that does anything to mimic that degradation of the actual tape. Is that how I understand it?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and hear more of it. along to the third entry in our Portastudio video.
The Tark 144 is from Tark Audio of Portland, Oregon. This one came out in September of 2023, so soon after the JSA, although they probably weren't even aware of each other.
Probably not.
The 144, as we said in the opening, refers to the first Teak 144, Teak being the parent company of TASCAM.
Yeah, TEAC. Yeah.
Yeah, which had a view meter, and this is a backlit view meter. The other notable thing here is the dynamic option, which, as we were just talking with the JSA having that sort of tape effect, he's not imitating tape, but he is trying to capture the dynamics that happen from incoming and then writing to an analog medium. Like with a BBD or any other analog media like cassette, you need to compress the signal a bit. And so he's using a compander circuit like you would find in a BBD analog delay or other sort of things to act as that sort of compressor and expander inline, which you can put in and out of the signal if you want. But it's a new take on the form.
Yeah, I really liked that switch more than I thought I would. It was a lot of fun to mess with that. I will say, when the LED is green, it is very bright. Green LEDs are very bright. But this is also the first one that has the switchable high and low Z. Can you talk a little bit about the idea between high Z versus low Z in these devices?
Sure. A high impedance input is going to drive your guitar harder, and that can be very useful. We see this now in an increasing number of fuzz pedals, but it's going to mimic some behaviors, but also get in the way of pedal interactions. And so that's often they have to be optional, because otherwise it dedicates where you put it in your pedal chain.
Sometimes it doesn't work so well later in the chain, is what you're
That's
saying.
Right. Yep. And so, it's an option that a couple of them addressed, but for the most part, they had to choose, am I a fuzz pedal where I want to be high impedance because I'm at the very beginning, or am I willing to be anywhere in the chain but risk not getting all of the saturation effects that you get from a fuzz pedal?
Nice. Well, let's go ahead and hear it.
So inside, he is using the 4558 op amp, which was, again, historically accurate to the 144. He's not using the other op amp, which was lower quality. He's using some of the more common ones. The 4558, like I said, the legendary op amp behind things like the Tube Screamer, came out in 1974. And so console equipment didn't use them until much later. But one of the TASCAM, or Teak in this case, innovations was to make it available. It was considered a desirable property to not have it be a discrete op amp. We have, of course, flipped in our thinking nowadays, and people will advertise that they have a discrete op amp. But at the time, the fact that it was a high-quality integrated circuit to do your op amp capabilities was cool and innovative.
Let's hear it some more. Now let's check out the fourth in our lineup. What can you tell us about this one?
So this one has a very difficult to pronounce builder name because there's no vowels in it.
MXNHLT. No?
It is. It's named after Max Anhalt, the builder. He's just removed the vowels of California. This one is our first that tries to imitate the look of a Portastudio 424. It's gray, although it's supposed to be a Mark I, but it's got the classic orange. And then again, when we were talking about the input and output controls, one of those would have been a slider on the Portastudio. And so he has chosen to use it, although historically it would have been a analog or logarithmic slider, and instead this is a linear slider.
Which is not exactly how we hear sound. That's not how we perceive things. With volume, linear is not going to sound linear. It's just kind of an interesting element of audio. But I digress a little bit. This was pretty similar to some of the other offerings in terms of what we have going on, especially that second pedal, the JSA audio one. But obviously that didn't have the slider. Personally, I don't love sliders on guitar pedals. I think the big issue for me is that it's just so much more open space for, say, someone to spill a beer on stage and land in there. I worry about the longevity of pedals with faders unless they are protected by a dust cover or something like that. What's your take? Is that something you care to discuss?
I don't play out as much as you do, and so for me, in the studio, I don't worry too much about it. It does feel like, a little bit harder to maintain clarity of where you're going, but not so much. It's very easy to put a piece of tape to indicate what your normal setting is. So
that's true. I also worry about them bending a little bit more than the pots, but it's certainly an attractive look. It's a great nod to the original units. So it's no shade, it's just personal taste. Well, let's hear a little bit of this thing. All right, Dan, what else can you tell us about the insides?
Well, this was a meticulous build of the circuit. The nice thing about all these TASCAM devices is that the service manuals are available and they have the full circuit. And so for builders now looking to build a reproduction, they don't have to guess. They don't have to look at someone's trace. They can see what the service manual was and it will say what the key components are. And so this is a reliable reproduction of that circuit.
And it certainly sounds great. So let's hear it a little bit more. Fifth on the list, we have this beautiful pedal, which technically goes this way, but it's staying up on the table a little bit better like this. What can you tell us about this pedal by Chimera Mechanical?
So this is a very young builder out of Tennessee, Jake. This is maybe his second or third pedal he's made. And he described it originally as just a take on that popular DIY fuzz circuit. So this is a reference, I think, back to our friend Mr. Tuttle at the beginning. It's his own circuit board design. That's what he's interested and excited about. From an inside perspective, he used a 072 like Mr. Tuttle. When I asked him about it, he said he thought it sounded nastier. He had tried a number of the obvious op amps out, and that was the one that he had settled on. But he also put it on a socket so that it is easy to pull out and put in other op amps for those of us who try to dial in tones more precisely.
And that's kind of unique. I can only think of a handful of other pedals that allow you to put in your own op amp. I believe the Milkman Boost does that as well. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm not sure, but yeah, I could tell this one was definitely, to me, felt different than the other pedals in this series. I felt like with a lot of them, a common theme is very much that you turn it and turn it, and turn it, and the bulk of that gain is in that last 20-ish%. This one I felt and heard the distortion, the overdrive come in a lot sooner, just kind of in the background there, which was really interesting to me.
And I think that reflects the intention of the builder, which was to develop a fuzz rather than try and recreate something that, again, with the age of the pedal builder, he would not have gone through the Portastudio life cycle directly.
Well, neither did McGee.
Fair. This one came out in March of 2025, so again, a few months ahead of time. So it's an interesting choice of an early pedal line. He's gone on to make some very interesting new pedals.
So this came out in March of 2025. So this is the fifth pedal in 11 that we're talking about, and all of them have come out in the past 12 months, the rest of the ones.
That's right.
That's crazy. Well, let's hear it a little bit. There's one thing that this has, I think only one, that a few of the other pedals have, correct me if I'm wrong, but this has a switch that helps it work better with bass and synthesizers, which I think that's kind of an interesting thing. I find this one sonically more unique in several ways that we've already discussed. And that's, I think, a big part of that is he made an attempt to make this more palatable for bassists, which I think is really cool. So before we put this one away and put in another sound sample, there is one other interesting thing that you noted about this pedal.
Yeah, so this is the only one of this collection where there's not even a subtle reference to Portastudio. Like I said, I think he was making a fuzz based on a thing, and only sort of after the buzz did he go, well, it is based on the 424.
It's almost a spiritual successor.
But Synapse Burnout does not, I think you have to take a couple of leaps of references to get to TASCAM.
That is interesting. A lot of them are named something in the vein of 424 or Porta, or in the next one, Cassette Preamp. So let's go ahead and hear another sound sample from this guy and get into our next pedal. This is the Cassette Preamp. Can we talk about this one a little bit?
Sure. This one came from Finland, and it is not a Portastudio, and it's not a Teak 144. It is vaguely referred to as a portable cassette preamp. He's very vague in his language, but he also mentions that he tracked down the particular obscure op amps, a supply of them, in order to make this pedal a circuit perfect reproduction of the popular thing. It turns out to be a Porta II from 1984. Oh. This is from reading way too many service manuals.
You're the one who dug out this information?
To figure out which one used the circuit as designed. This is Color Audio's first pedal. This has gone through a number of batches. This came out in July of 2025, and it's a sort of different take. He wasn't trying to do exactly the MKII sound. He just really had a personal nostalgia for the preamp.
All right, well, let's hear a little bit of it. So this has something that I think is unique to the other pedals, and it's the toggle there and the low pass filter here. So in my playing of this, I felt like this is the low pass filter on the top here. The low pass filter is a full knob, which I found it was subtle, rather subtle, the entire breadth of it, but I really enjoyed having that high pass filter, because to me, thinking about that nostalgic sound, it is losing some of that low end. I really enjoyed playing with that toggle. I thought that was really fun, and one of the more unique things brought to this batch of guitar pedals. But I'm curious what your take is.
Again, I'm more interested in the construction in some ways, and this one, the engineering on it is just amazing. One of my hobby horses is the argument of do not plug it into the wrong power, right? That pedals will be like, oh, it has to be 9 volts or everything will go disastrous. The documentation for it says this will accept 9 to 18 volts. If you get above 21 volts, it will shut down.
Okay.
So it's not saying, and I think it will take up to 35 volts, which if you're doing that, you've really done something wrong. But in addition, the bypass works such that even if it shuts itself down, because you've plugged in 22 volts into it, it will still pass signal. In fact, if you pull the power plug from it, it will still pass signal. For me, there's something very exciting when an engineer spends the time to get their power system that squared away, that they don't have to say, do the right thing or, something will break. But instead it takes the approach of, no, do the right thing or it won't work.
Yeah. It's just a safety shutoff valve. That's really cool.
I also appreciate a vendor who tracks down obscure op amps for the sound they're trying to pursue, as opposed to just going through the usual basket of options.
Mm-hmm. Let's hear a little bit more of it. Next we have what is probably easily the most commercially successful pedal of the bunch here, the JHS 424 Gain Stage. And that came out last year, and I don't think anyone was expecting it to be what it was. So what can you tell us about this?
So this was my second most popular breakdown, or actually my most popular breakdown of last year, which I did not expect. There were two angles I took to it. One was just to look at how it was built. What sort of stands out is, again, from a builder finding the right op amps. As cited and as shown, JHS did manage to source two of the somewhat more obscure op amps that the TASCAM 42 Mark I in gray used in their EQ lineup. And so it's a two PCB layout where all the sonic elements are in the front, and then the general handling of things like the XLR was in the back board. But my post there, which I was intrigued by, was that this is a form factor, the XLR out, that JHS has done in a couple of different pedals.
The color box, for one.
The color box, which I recently took apart, but also the pulp and peel. One of their older ones has a XLR out.
That's the compressor?
Yeah, it's a dirty compressor. Yeah. It's a fun pedal. But what I showed in the breakdown, which was interesting, was unlike a lot of builders unlike builders should be trying for standardized builds of their systems, the pulp and peel and this one have entirely different pedal architectures internally. That they have gotten to a very similar output or shape. Through very different means. You can see very different engineering approaches to it. And that was what I showed. But this one captured a lot of attention and got me interested in what makes this circuit so interesting. Because it might be me McGee, but this does say on the PCB, McGee made me do it.
All right, well, let's hear it a little bit. So this follows the theme, which one of the many themes with these pedals is just really has a ton of volume and gain on tap. There's a lot of range in this. I can understand why it was immediately so popular. They're the biggest brand of all the companies we've seen so far. Maybe only anywhere close would be the Benson pedal, which we're going to look at in a moment. And there was a little bit of a funny thing that happened on the release day for this, which I'm not sure how much we want to talk about. But apparently, a lot of the pedal builders were pooling water from the same well, as I like to say. Obviously, we're getting similar inspiration. So we're already a couple of pedals of this style of pedal into the year, and we're not even done yet. So let's hear another sound sample and check out some more pedals. Moving right along, we have this one from Dirty Sock. What can you tell us about it?
So this is, as you said, one of those that had a release plan. The circuit board has its copyrights or has its build notes for July. He was gearing up to release them. Dirty Sock Effects is a small builder in Australia.
Oh, well.
So we're continuing our world tour.
It is a bit of a world tour, isn't it?
And he makes them in small batches. So when he finally did decide to bring this to market, he created unique colorways for each pedal. So this particular one I chose in gray with the orange that follows the style, but every other one sold in that batch was a different set of knobs and enclosure.
Very cool.
One of the standout things for this one, you have a slider but uses analog encoding, so it's logarithmic. But
Very nice.
other one that he got that most people didn't was the choice of the EQ knobs has a unity notch.
Yeah, the detente.
Which
I really
all
like
of these
that.
have EQs.
Yeah.
No one else bothered to get that right.
Which is, if you've ever mixed on a physical mixing board that has the knobs, the EQ knobs do tend to have a little stop to tell you when you are smack in the middle, just helping you find your way back to neutral zone. So I noticed that too and thought that was just a great touch. In fact, I kind of always like it when pedals have that EQ knob tell you, this is no cuts, no gains. This is unity. Let's hear it. So I don't really have a lot else to say about this one. At a point, they are all doing something that's very, very similar. Again, I'm not a big fader fan. I love the look of this. I love the DIY element. I love hearing that he does those small batches and that you can get something that's very unique. So all things considered, I think it's a really nice little pedal.
He does make a couple of pedals that are more standard.
Sure.
That are unique circuits, but a fair number of what he does are some very cool takes. He's an amp repair person as well, and so he gets into classic circuits. He has a series on, caring about gear that no one else cares about. And so I do like that he recently came out with like a harmonic percolator, also in a very small batch of I just wanted to get this out of the way.
So can you remind me, how long after the JHS pedal did this come out?
Right, so this was planned for August.
Yes.
I believe it finally came out in October.
Okay.
But again, in a small batch of, here's 5, and they sold out in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And I think he realized he didn't have to wait so long.
Yeah, for sure. And for all of you watching, I know I've said a few negative things about my opinion on sliders, but let us know in the comments. Do you like sliders on pedals? Do you have kind of the same concerns that I do? Or do you think I'm being dramatic? Let me know. All right, let's hear this thing a little bit more and then we'll keep on trucking. Next, we have the only one that I had any semblance of experience with before we started this journey together. The Benson, and this is based on the Mark II, I believe. Is that correct?
That's right. The blue color, I was wrong earlier. Blue color was for Mark II. The gray color was for Mark I. This is why we've seen these different colorations.
So it's my understanding that Chris had actually designed a Mark I and a Mark II. So if you don't remember, I think it was the day JHS released theirs, Chris posted to the Benson Amps Instagram a picture of both the pedals and said, well, something along the lines of, well, I guess I'm not releasing these anytime soon. I'm glad he changed his mind. I know they did a limited batch of these and sold out pretty much immediately. So obviously the demand was there for the Benson version of this pedal, which I would love to hear more about from your perspective.
Sure. So Benson pedals, which I have, I think all of them at this point, are an interesting take on pedal building, as I've noted in my 1 or 2 teardowns so far, in that it is very much an amp builder's version of pedal building. It's very three-dimensional. There are pieces under the other pieces, and it's true to the spirit of the circuit. Again, he could work off the original schematic, except for the high IQ button, or high Z button, which he carefully hid to the side. But otherwise, yeah, it is minimal to the point of almost, which is reflective of the exact circuit itself. Everyone else said they were true to the circuit, but still did pedal builder tricks to make it normally function. This one strikes me as even more sort of to the core. The other one is I was surprised at how small they were because he generally has used a very consistent format. I have a long line of his pedals, and this is
more like the germanium boost.
On the germanium boost, the fairly obscure of the Benson pedals.
Yeah, that's a great boost, by the way. But yeah, let's go ahead and hear this thing a little bit. So something that stood out to me on this is that the names of these. So one is called Trim, and I assume that's the one that you actually would turn. And then the other one is called Fader.
Trim would be on the Portastudio the input gain,
right?
Because that's what a studio effect would call it is that. And then yes, I think instead of putting a fader in, he just called it Fader.
Yeah.
But so where the other ones have the sliders that you have issues with, instead it's a knob, but
but no master volume.
But no master volume.
Right. So it's a little bit different in that regard.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're very interactive, very cool little pedal. Let's hear it some more. The one other thing to me is we talked a little bit about the enclosures. This to me is the most robust feeling of the pedals, and I can say that about the germanium boost as well. I also, it's very unique with a kind of hammered finish. I really feel like you could throw this off a building and it would be totally fine. But yeah, I really dig the aesthetics of
What's the smallest of the pedals?
That's true.
The other ones are all the same standard box size, and this one is narrower, and I don't know that I would actually agree that it
feels more robust,
more robust, but definitely it is appropriate size pedal for
what it is. It does have that folded enclosure, which is very, very in right now, I think, with some of the boutique builders. I know that Heather Brown Electronicals does some. I believe Keeley's been doing some. Actually, all the Oklahoma cities, all the Oklahomies seem to be doing it. So it's a very, very handsome little pedal. We have two more pedals to talk about. So this is our penultimate pedal. What can you tell us about this one?
So Gigahearts is a builder out of Manchester, England, who is relatively new to the pedal building game as a brand, but is very well known among the DIY groups as a master of circuits. And so he has kind of a couple of classic homages to old pedals. And then when he found out I was doing this, he, rushed me a prototype. This is not that. We actually had some mailing snafus because he was so excited. This has now been on the market for just a few months now, or a few weeks, because of how long this has taken me to get around to it. But again, this was a design he had in mind, I believe, well before JHS had indicated an interest as well. Again, pulling from a homage to old circuits and nostalgia.
Awesome. Something of note to me is this has the fader, the slider, and the XLR out. I think it's the only pedal that has both of those. A ground lift. Something I thought was adorable is the LED is labeled record. And I just thought that was really, really a neat little tribute to what this pedal references. So let's hear it. So what can you tell us about the insides of this guy?
Well, as we'd expect from someone who has made their bones in the DIY circuit community, it is a very well laid out board inside for ease of build. Mm-hmm. So whereas some of the other ones were maybe more sophisticated in terms of having all the things, this one has a clarity of how to build it that does show up in someone who has had to help other people understand PCB design beyond just what they need to manufacture for their own.
Well, that's great. Let's hear just a little bit more of this guy. Last but not least, we have one pedal remaining. Dan, can you tell us about this one?
Sure. This is from Neutrino Labs MX, because it's from Mexico to finish our world tour. This is a very innovative builder. Again, the Mexican build scene is exciting and fairly small, and they're one of the big players in it. And this has shown up in a couple places. I believe these were made sort of one-off because they're not on the main website for them. They don't pursue them. But he did recently post that he built a double one as a custom for someone else. And so they're a great builder to work with because they do really great work without much volume needed. But as you note, this is yet another XLR powered thing. And other 424 breakdowns have included this one. So I felt compelled to track one down, and I asked the builder to make one, and here we are. I of course paid for it. But.
All right, well, let's hear it a little bit. We have discussed and heard every pedal. We thought we would share what our top two, because it's kind of hard. Again, they're all very much in the same vein, but I think that a few of them had some standout elements. So would you like to go first?
Sure. So obviously I collect all the things because that's who I am. But for me also, the build matters as much as anything else. And so for me, the two standouts were the Porta IV and the Cassette Preamp. The Cassette Preamp is, like I said, an exceptionally well-designed pedal. So I appreciate that, and it does its work very well, and it's working with a different type of device. And then the Porta IV, because of that age knob, but also because of the trickery by which it happened, I love a great innovation like that.
You know, I also was thinking about saying this one because I liked the age feature, but personally, I preferred the dynamic switch on the Tark 144. I really liked that more than I thought I would after reading the manual. I thought this one sounded great. It has the low Z and high Z and that dynamic switch. I just think this is an exceptionally cool pedal. And of course it has the meter, and I always love looking at that. But I'm also going to agree with you that the Cassette preamp is really good. I very much enjoyed the filtering options on this, though again, I felt like the high pass filter stuff was more obvious and for me more interesting. It's exactly what I wanted it to sound like. So I think we're kind of in agreement that this one is a very, very good pedal, though there's not a bad one in the bunch, in my opinion. They all do what they promise to do. Some have certain different features, bells and whistles, so to say. So for someone looking to buy a Porta style preamp pedal, it's hard to go wrong. I think the big things are, do you want the XLR out? Do you want an age? Do you want high Z versus low Z? And I guess, how much control do you want? Do you want the trim and the fader, or is just the trim and a master volume, or trim and fader all that you need.
Thank you. This has been great to walk through and get some recordings and share the wild world of small builder pedals.
Yes, well, please go and follow Dan on all his channels. I'll have links to his channels and all of these pedals in the video description. You'll also see some general affiliate links in there. No pressure to ever use those. And I always encourage you to buy local, buy directly from smaller builders whenever possible. That's always a great, helpful thing for them. And if you enjoyed this video, please check out the one on the screen, which YouTube has chosen just for you. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for understanding. I'm Emily. This is Dan. And yeah, we'll see you soon.